Well, and now with a second panel discussion on the topic of climate research, and disaster preparedness. And we have once again three very interesting panelists. So that's Professor Dr. Charming Chen, so Vice Director of United Nations Europe. So then Gerd Friedsam, Vice Director. So then Dr. Annette Scherzoy. So please come on stage. Well, I think I will begin again, Chao Meng. I would like to ask you, and basically it has been planned to do the interview in English, but I think we can do it in German too, or do you prefer doing it in English? Okay, then we'll do it in English.
So maybe my first question is, maybe you could explain a little bit what the United Nations University is, and what you're doing there as a vice rector for Europe, and then maybe also what you're doing in your institute, right? So maybe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does it work?
Yeah, it works. So.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate that. It's an honor to be here. The United Nations University was founded in 1972 by the General Assembly of the United Nations. It's called university, which is a little bit misleading because people tend to ask me, how many students do you have? We don't have that many students, but we do have the joint master's program with the University of Bonn, of which we're very proud of. Our university is called university because of the privilege of academic freedom, because we want to be an independent think tank to advise United Nations system, but also its member states. That is why we are called university, although we are actually really a think tank. We have about 700 staff members at the university, and we have altogether 13 institutes worldwide, spread over 11 countries. The Institute for Environment and Human Security is based in Bonn. We focus on education, so that's our joint master's program with the University of Bonn, GeoRisk. And we also focus on research in three main areas. One is risk. We look at how risks are interconnected and try to understand the interconnectedness of these risks, and also look for solutions, interconnected solutions for tackling these risks. Another area is adaptation, how we can adapt to climate change to mitigate risks. The third area is about transformation, because we are at a critical time that we need to transform to survive and to flourish as humankind. So that's basically our university and our institute.
And so the areas you're working in scientifically, that's not Germany, right? So it's basically other places in the world. Could you tell me a little bit, or us, kind of what the areas are in which you're working and what types of questions you're tackling there?
You mean our institute here in Bonn?
Yeah, your institute, yeah.
Yeah, so the main research area is first of all risk, because we started as a basic risk institute.
Yeah.
So we look at different types of disaster risks, mainly due to natural hazards. Because due to climate change, according to a UNEP report, all of the major disaster risks, 90% of them are due to weather, climate change or weather related. So that's our main research area. We look at how these risks are interconnected and how they cascade each other and compounding each other to make it stronger. For instance, how pandemic can increase the risk of flood event.
So you always have a global perspective. So that's what I meant. So you're looking into Asian countries or in African countries or so. This is a very important focus. Do you also look into Germany? So is that also something which?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We zoom in and zoom out.
Yeah.
So our research always has a global perspective, but it's locally grounded. So we do field research, for instance, worldwide, in Asia, in Africa, but we also have projects in Germany. We had, for instance, a project actually about Bonn, how Bonn can create more green areas to create a cool corridor when heat waves hit. And we examined what different people who are differently prone to the heat waves. And actually we found out that the students of university are the most prone to heat waves because usually they cannot afford to have a high ceiling apartment, so they live in the Dachboden or the attic. So they are the most prone to heat waves, and elderly people as well. And the new study we want to start is really on the R Valley flood event. So we are starting this this month, actually.
So at the moment, of course, or not only at the moment, let's say in the last couple of years and more intensely, in the Bundestagswahlkampf, of course, the topic of Paris Agreement, the 1.5 degree goal of not reaching basically towards this goal, but trying to even keep it below at 1.5 degree, at least below 2 degrees. There has been a major object of discussion, and many parties, in particular the Green Party, of course, has basically raised concern and that we have to take measures, even more pronounced measures to prevent, let's say, the climate change. And if you look at that, from your perspective, if you take a German view, right? Of course, your views are often globally, but if you look at Germany, right? What types of measures do you think are very important for the next couple of years? So what to reach these goals? Or is that relevant at all? Because we are a small country, right? And the question is, you have other countries like China or India, and so where there's a lot of let's say that the society develops quite rapidly, right? And so what do you think? What does Germany have to do? What is your opinion?
Well, that's a very big question. I feel very overwhelmed. But I think every country counts. And every individual counts in such a climate crisis. And actually, Germany has been contributing a lot to the world, be it the environmental technology, innovation, and also in terms of regulation and law. The Klimaschutzgesetz, which was just created very recently, the Climate Action Act, which foresees that Germany will cut 55% carbon emission by 2030. I think that's an excellent example of doing that. And even by 2019, Germany has already produced electricity through renewable resources like wind and solar energy. I think that's a great contribution to the world. And also, I think Germany is has a long tradition of a country of thinkers and innovators. I think if you combine these two, Germany can make a great contribution to the world, because only innovation will not help us move forward. Actually, in this world, we have enough wealth, we have enough technology, but we are not having a world which feeds everyone and which everyone can live in safety and certain materials standard. So that's where the combination of creating a new way of thinking plus innovation can really bring the world to a much better place. Like the fantastic choir has sung, we want to make the world a better place and we want to make a difference. I think that's where Germany can really make a difference.
So the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which have been, let's say, created in the context of the Agenda 2030 of the UN. Of course, there was so these are mostly political goals, right, which you have in these goals, and there have been very strong drivers which change these goals. For example, digitalization is one of the driving forces, but also migration and other drivers. Do you think that it is time to think about a new agenda. Let's say, you know, let's say a new agenda 2040 or so, you know, which also in which the recent developments are part of, which are the drivers of these goals? Or do you think one should basically first keep on working on the goals before starting a new phase of thinking? So what is your opinion?
Well, I think there are different voices about the SDGs. I think one shortcoming of the SDGs is that some of the SDGs, if some of the SDGs go up, some of the others might go down. So there's a correlation there. But I do think even now we should start thinking about a different agenda which has a different approach, which is more about mindset change. Because the SDGs are still coming from a place of traditional thinking. But I think the main challenge for now is really to change our mindset. If you try to solve the problems we have created with the same mindset, it doesn't work that way. To overcome this kind of, or to enable mindset change, I think that's the general challenge of the whole world. I think the next SDGs, we should think from a different mindset. For instance, we should capitalize on human values. For example, I heard the TEDx talk of Professor Marcus Gabriel. He talked about universal values. His premise is that we do have universal values. If that is true, then we should capitalize on that. And coming from that kind of place to set the next generation of SDGs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That were really interesting points that you made. Wir können jetzt aber
But now we will continue in German. But I'm really happy to have you here, Ms. Gerd Friedsam, head of the German Agency for Technical Relief. Does it work, your microphone? So we have just been talking about it. To what extent is it important to take global measures against climate change? And I think in this region here, all over Germany, no event or incident showed us to what extent climate change is important and to tackle it. So I refer to the flood disaster in Germany in the midst of July. So how did you live this disaster? So what did you have in mind when you saw this disaster, the flood? Well, this question, on the one hand, well, I can split up first my answer in two parts. On the one hand, so I was very emotional because I was personally concerned if some of your family members are directly affected by this flood. But on the other hand, as the head of technical relief and disaster intervention organization, so then you really have to be ready to act. And that's why our institution has been involved quite early on this Wednesday morning, along with the local stakeholders. And basically, well, we did everything we had to do to prepare our interventions. And the situation itself, as for this, I did not expect this, but nonetheless, it became a little bit clearer at 7 p.m. when we saw the first pictures, video pictures on TV. So video pictures made by local people with their smartphone. So then we really understood the dimension of this flood. And at the end of the day, we have to say that I never saw a flood like this. And I'm working in this field since more than 30 years. And nonetheless, I never saw this, and mainly referring to this valley of the R, never. But nonetheless, we have to be prepared for this kind of events, and then you have to face the challenges and the things running. Then the coordination of the staff, of the different levels of stakeholders. So that's a kind of an automatic mechanism. It's very interesting to learn this from you. Well, you refer to those mechanisms, so we just see that the rebuilding measures are ongoing. I do not want to be pessimistic, but I want to be realistic. I think we have to expect further disasters with a higher frequency in the future. Do you expect that it will happen more often? Well, I'm not an expert in climate research. But nonetheless, my task is to read and study different publications related to this. I have to get familiar with different scenarios. And then, if you do this, you have to state that this kind of event is happening more and more often. We had the big floods here in the Rhine Valley in the middle of the 90s, so still in the last century. Then on the river Elbe in the years 2012, 2013. Then this flood disaster. But in between, there were many further disasters, floods, in other German regions. And in addition, it's not the specific flood only, it is drought too. If you remember, last year we had a lot of fires in the woods in the eastern part of Germany, and that happens too. And then there are waters with insufficient oxygen. You have to reanimate these waters, these lakes, or whatever it may be. So this is related to and due to climate change too. And that's why here I have to believe my statistical information, and we can see that it happens, it occurs more often. We have more interventions if I consider the big events. So I really assume, and I'm sure, that we will have to expect more disasters of this kind. So the Mehleme-Bach, a very small river here in the region, has been victim of a flood in 2015 and in 2016. There were further events of this kind in North Rhine-Westphalia. So well, that's what nobody desires, but nonetheless we have to deal with this in the future. So your institution, your technical relief agency, how do you get prepared for this? Well, considering the recent intervention in the Ahr Valley and our specific competences, I can say that we are well positioned. We have a system of disaster intervention and disaster aid, which works out well. So technically spoken, it works well. So, well, if you have to save human lives, that's always a priority. I think this is obvious. But then on the other hand, later on, you have to see what must be done in order to prepare damages or prevent damages in the environment. So we have specific competences. Drinking water, providing it to the people. So we never had a disaster like this one. So, but well, then you have to restore electricity supply in the Ahr Valley. So close to the village of Warpolsheim, there was no natural gas available. The fuel tanks have been swimming away. So the energy supply is and was a big problem and big issue there too. And then you may imagine what kind of mix of water and other liquids you found in the cellars of the homes. You have to pump out all this liquid, this mix of oil and water out of the cellars. So that's the specific competences we have. And you always may wonder, do we need this knowledge again? And the best example is the building or rebuilding of bridges. So, and I said 10 years ago, I already said, no, we do not need the specific competence in our institution. And fortunately, we maintained this knowledge. And well, I think we did a great job to the benefit of the people, building bridges, because this enables the people to get from A to B, crossing this river, because otherwise they couldn't do so. Yes, you're right. I understand you perfectly. So obviously you have a lot of competences. Nonetheless, we have to hope the best for the future. Thank you very much indeed for coming here. I wish you the very best to you, to your technical relief agency, and it would be nice if we would not need your service anymore in the future. But so one more issue: sustainability. So how can we take advantage of our resources, taking into account that they are limited? So Annette Chazot, she's the Vice Rector for Sustainability since the month of May 2021. So you are in charge of this topic. From your point of view, the university, what can the university do to foster sustainability? Well, basically in Germany, more than half of the young people are going to the university, and we, as a University of Excellence, have a specific responsibility to take. You referred to the resources, how to use resources. We have to do it responsibly. We have to deal responsibly with the nature and the environment. And then, how do we manage the future of our society? And well, we want to take all these responsibilities, fostering, promoting sustainability in all the areas of our university, in teaching, lecturing, technical operations. Well, we are well positioned. We are not starting from scratch. Since 2019, 100% of our electricity is coming from renewables. We are certified fair trade university. So in the area of teaching, lecturing, the students may deal with many topics and themes related to sustainability, and we will strengthen this further in our curriculums. And beyond the contents of our teaching, we try to apply new and alternative ways of learning. So this is organized across the different faculties and departments, and that's why we can say we are doing a lot of things, and given that we have a specific governance structure, this enables us to structure this work even better. And I'm really grateful that we have now this new office of the Vice Rector for Sustainability. That's unique in Germany, from my point of view. Yeah, that's true. That's one of the first. You are one of the first Vice Rectors for Sustainability. You just said that research in this area is very strong in Bonn on the topic of sustainability. Yeah, yes, it is very diverse, and I think one of our strengths, and it has been mentioned before, that's networking here in the United Nations city of Bonn. This transdisciplinary work, and taking into account the fact that these challenges are very complex ones. So we have to cooperate between different areas. And just as an example, our TR6, Sustainable Futures, so transdisciplinary research area with researchers from 5 different departments working on the same topic of sustainability and dealing with topics like demographic change, nutrition, health, climate change, changes in the nature, in the natural environment. So many different topics are addressed here. And in this context, we have to mention the excellence cluster FINEROP. That's the only excellence cluster in the area of agricultural science for sustainable crops and plants. So there are many different areas of applied science, renewable materials, research on bionics, taking the nature as a model for the development of new technologies, or the CEF, the Center for Development Studies and Research, interdisciplinary work as well with people from social science, with economists, dealing with topics of poverty in the world and the cooperation with the developing world, the developing countries, and the Alliance of Bonn for research on sustainability, founded in 2017, and gathering all this expertise, all this knowledge, and facing the challenges. And here we have the United Nations University as one partner in this alliance. So the students, what's the benefit for them or for the employees? What's their role when it comes to the implementation of sustainability-related measures? Well, so the implementation of the new governance structure is helpful when we want to foster and promote sustainability. But what's important, that's the commitment of all the involved people, the employees, the students, and that's why explicitly we defined some areas of actions like participation, transparency, and the commitment of students. And we have many different work groups, workshops working on different topics related to sustainability. So groups of students, groups of employees, like the Department for Ecology, or the group of students working on the topic of fair trade. So in bundling all these initiatives, measures, that's the task of the new so-called Green Office. It is managed by students, so it is based on an idea coming from the General Students Committee, the ASTA in German, and we all together want to implement a culture of sustainability, and that's why participation here is very important, and we want to involve as many people as possible. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Chersoy. Thank you very much to Gerd Friedsam and to Professor Dr. Shan for this very interesting insight. Thank you very much.